Welcome to the fourth Amazing Race Canada recap episode of the Your Team Number podcast. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me as always is the Canadian who's essentially far more hardcore than all his podcasting relatives, Logan Saunders.
Evening.
You can tweet us using the hashtag yatncast, or you can email us at yatncast@gmail.com. So, previously 10 teams raced to Buenos Aires. At the roadblock, some teams paired up, which left Hamilton to beg and Cynthia to shoot him down. At the detour, Neil and Christian tangoed their way out there quickly and won the leg, whilst Nick and Sabrina's quit at a football-themed active route info saw them drop to the back of the pack and narrowly avoid elimination. Brian and Cynthia beat Dana and Amanda in a foot race, leaving him to eulogise them as they were eliminated from the race.
You know what was the greatest thing about the previously on segment?
No Nelly Furtado references?
Well, number one, no Nelly Furtado references. That's in my notes too. But John Montgomery, I don't think he actually said Dana and Amanda's names in the whole previously on segment.
No, he said there was two pairs of police officers.
He doesn't know their names either. Like, all the fans online said, I feel bad about the cops that are going, and nobody online said, hey, Dana and Amanda are going. Nobody could remember their names, so he said, oh yeah, the two women, the two cops, the two people from Newfoundland. But nobody online out of any of the fans ever said their names specifically. And then we have John Montgomery in the previously on segment that doesn't know their names either.
Yeah, I watched that segment twice and I didn't even notice that.
That was the main thing I was keeping an ear out for, was if John just said, oh yeah, and Brian and Cynthia talked about the eliminated team, and the eliminated team whose names I can't recall were eliminated.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. I was too busy thinking, what banners can we have this week?
So, I would say that even with the lack of airtime Simi and Opie have had over the past few weeks, I think Dana and Amanda have to be ranked number one for the least acknowledged team to compete in the Amazing Race Canada this far.
I don't think we've had a team like Simi and Opie in terms of edit last this long in ages.
Yeah. I mean, they had a big edit in the premiere, and then even though it's been crazy because they're always in last place by the time you get to the halfway point of the episode, and then after that they find a way to recover and get to the middle of the pack. But they've been on the verge of being eliminated at the halfway point so many times that I thought that alone would give them attention, but it hasn't. They've just been swept under the rug.
Have they even had a confessional since week one?
They definitely didn't have one this week. They may have had a quick one last week, I think, though.
I don't think we've actually seen them talk to the camera since Toronto.
The first time they went to Toronto, or the second time they went to Toronto this leg? Is Toronto just one big hub for the amazing... I don't think a city has ever been used that much for flights and stuff in a single season of the race.
Yeah, I mean, you know as well as I do that Toronto is a bleeding massive airport.
Oh, it's ridiculously big compared to a couple of the other... Well, I've been to Kelowna Airport and Vancouver Airport. It's definitely in three different groupings, that's for sure.
I mean, Vancouver's pretty big, but Toronto is absolutely huge from my experience. I mean, any airport that's got about 5 or 6 different Tim Hortons is a big airport. You just estimate it by the size of the Tim Hortons? I can tell you that the airport here in Kelowna, it only has one, and it's one that they will close the shop early at the airport. They will close it early compared to the listed time, which is just devastating, and they'll just run out of everything even before that. They're the worst. Yeah, they are basically the Gino and Jesse of Tim Hortons. The Gino and Jesse of Tim Hortons and airports, yes. And teams were transported back to El Obelisco for the pit start, and they must now fly to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and avoid being tempted at the airport by Tim Hortons to find the BMO kiosk, where they will be handed their next clue. They have $350 Canadian this time for this leg of the race.
They've been given a lot of money each leg. This is a lot of money compared for the cities that they're traveling to. It's not like they're going to London or Moscow frequently. This isn't exactly the most expensive cities possible.
No, but I think Buenos Aires taxis probably cost quite a bit of money.
Especially if you go to the embassy first before the actual route marker.
Yeah, that was my understanding of why they got a lot of American dollars last week as well.
But then again, Gino and Jesse and those two cops from Newfoundland and Chile saved money by running halfway across Santiago. So they saved a lot of money that way.
And also, Halifax's airport is like an hour out of the city.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun thing with like casual fans, or maybe just people who don't travel through airports in general, that if you look at most city schematics, a lot of them don't have the airport located anywhere near the downtown of the city. It's pretty far out.
Manchester's about 45 minutes, I'd say, out of the city centre. And we get Neil and Kristen mentioning the Express Pass because it's the last week that it has to be handed out. And, appropriately, it is the last week that it could have been handed out.
Imagine if the rule, because for Amazing Race Canada, has the rule been leg 5 in the past?
Yeah, it's normally leg 5. But, as I pointed out on Facebook yesterday, the earliest we've seen is leg 3 because of Amazing Race Australia versus New Zealand's shortened season. But it's usually leg 5. It's usually leg 5 and leg 8, respectively.
That's pretty annoying for the hardcore fans, because the only unique thing that has yet to happen with the double express pass is what happens if a team gets eliminated before they hand out the second express pass. Which I believe we already know is, what is it, that it's essentially up for grabs for the team that finishes first on the next leg?
Yeah, it's confusing because it's never actually properly happened, but as I understand it, the rule is if a team gets eliminated with the double express pass not handed out, the team that comes in first on the leg they get eliminated, I think, gets it. It's either the leg they get eliminated or the next leg. But it's a confusing rule because, like the express pass usage on a fast forward, it's never actually happened. So it's a little bit hypothetical.
It's sort of like that little-known rule with, like, in Survivor, where every season there's always dozens of people who ask, oh, what happens if 2 people get 5 votes each and they both use a hidden immunity idol? And the answer's already out there. Jeff Probst has already said it. Said, well, it's pretty obvious what would happen. Both would be immune, and then there's just the tribal council is just done all over again. But it's similar to the situation with like the Express Pass and the other crap that goes on with the Amazing Race, with the little known twist that if you don't see it play out on TV, then you're going to see dozens of people asking the same question and probably interpret the rules differently as well, or just not get the details right.
The thing I was referring to with the Fast Forward Express Pass is the rumour of you getting a 2-hour penalty if you use a Express Pass on a Fast Forward. It's never happened, so we don't officially know, but as the rules can be interpreted, that is what happened. And Leilani is also from Halifax. The last time she was there, she was burying her dad, and the race day is also her mum's anniversary. So they're either going to win or get eliminated.
Yeah. We probably not, because the nature of what we discuss on this podcast, we're probably not going to discuss this at length, but probably one of the more emotional moments, I guess, on the race. Which, it's weird because just with how the episode ends for Hamilton Michaela, that even though Leilani's backstory is emphasized, it definitely gets overshadowed by Hamilton Michaela's elimination. Because I always check what the casual fans say after the end of each episode to find the ridiculous complaints. And pretty much nobody was referring to Leilani's emotional backstory. It was just about Hamilton's journey on the race as the first transgender contestant on the Amazing Race in a North American version of the franchise. And yeah, Leilani's was pretty much ignored, which, I kind of feel bad for her about that.
And also bitching about Nick and Sabrina, because that's all they seem to do on the Facebook page.
Yes. It wouldn't be an episode of the Amazing Race Canada 3 without thousands of complaints about how Nick and Sabrina keep getting saved, which is probably one of the funnier subplots of this season. I just want to see what crazy flukes happen for them to keep staying alive each round.
Because I did wake up yesterday morning to the last message off Ben's conversation saying, you better not scroll up unless you want to be spoiled. So I knew I had to look at the Facebook page as soon as I finished. And I did, because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Just because your series of ridiculous complaints from casual fans always makes me laugh.
I'm amazed how many people have been reading that. Like, I'm getting hundreds of views on that within hours of posting it. Like, it's definitely spreading. Like, with Mike Bickerton, who's the head honcho for the Amazing Race Canada has been reading it and other people. So it's been pretty awesome to know that there's fans like us out there who are on the same page when it comes to the over-the-top nature of casual fans and sort of understanding where they're coming from. You know what's another case, too, for international travel on the Amazing Race as opposed to going to Halifax is that with John Montgomery, he didn't get to experience the best barbecue he's ever had, if not for the race going out of the country and heading to Argentina. He would have missed out on the best BBQ. Imagine if, like, Phil Kogan said, like, oh, well, this is Cancun. This is the place where I had a threesome 4 years ago or something like that. Just some really extremely personal detail that gets aired on TV.
Hashtag Kiwi threesome.
Kiwi threesome, yeah. And it trends. It starts trending.
Phil can have his own set of hashtags every week.
It's pretty surprising that, like, because I watch a lot of foreign language films, and then with John Montgomery at the Argentina pit stop last week, that, with the pit stop greeter, that it wasn't the start of some sort of passionate love affair. It just feels like the start of every Argentine-based movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, with the amount of foreign films that you watch, why have you not watched Dutch Mole yet?
I'm working on the French version of the Mole,
Qui est le Sauve.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit behind on Qui est le Sauve.
It's an hour and a half long.
I know.
Each episode.
Because it airs on a Wednesday as well, I've just got to sit down and be in the right frame of mind to watch it. I haven't watched this week's, and I've watched about a third of last week's.
I can assure you, though, that Dutch Mole is going to be the next reality show that I try to watch. I've spent, like, the past 3 days trying to get my next Amazing Race 17 Tarstorian log up.
Good, because Dutch Mole is amazing. It's like the best version of any franchise ever.
The gold standard.
Yeah, pretty much. Did you notice Cynthia's reaction to finding out it was Halifax as well?
Let's see. No, I did not.
It was Lobsters, Here We Come. Oh, Cynthia. Foreshadowing for you there, love.
Yes. It's funny about Halifax that all they talk about pretty much most of the episode in terms of the route markers they choose. Like they say, oh, Halifax is 260 years old. And then they go to the pit stop and say, oh, this is the oldest market. So apparently Halifax is like Canada's, forehead wrinkles or just making it out to be the oldest place possible.
And Nick and Matt get the privilege of taking over from the female cops as our terrible product placement people.
Yeah, taking over Susan and Sharon Jeet's role. I wrote that down too, it was like twice within about 2 minutes so that they're getting help from BMO. BMO has their back. It's now a triple tag team, I guess. And then using the BMO, let me see if I can do this from memory. The BMO World Elite MasterCard?
Yeah.
As opposed to the 1985 NES Nintendo game, the BMO World Class Meet MasterCard.
Yeah.
Where you get to do the 100-meter BMO dash and the 110 BMO hurdles where you have to keep flicking the card up in the air each time you jump over a hurdle.
And if you ever wanted proof of why Gina and Jesse are the worst, they genuinely tried to offer Hamilton and Michaela $50 and help at any task in exchange for the Express Pass. It was
Could have helped him out with the lobsters.
It was so half-arsed. She's like, yeah, we'll give you $50. Give you $50 off our MasterCard that we won't be able to get money off anyway.
Gino and Jesse also have your back. The Volta Mussolini guarantee.
But the team that, of course, had Hamilton and Michaela's back more than anyone else was Brent and Sean, who are the only team to find out that Hamilton is transgender. And this is first mention of our correct assumption that Brent and Sean are gay, and they get the double Express Pass.
I predicted this.
Yep, you did. Tick in your column. And teams must now make their way to Halifax's new central library and count how many of the 5,000 cards on the wall are smartphone screens with images of the old Halifax library on them. Once they hand the librarian the correct guess of 134, they receive their next clue.
Is this the second library to be featured in the Amazing Race Canada? Since the finale of Season 2 where they were in the library of whatever the crap it was called in Ottawa?
It was in the Speaker's office.
Yes. Yeah, you mean it's not called the library of whatever the crap it is? That's not going to be the little the title or the frame title on the entrance to the library?
Whilst it does have a plaque above the door saying the library of whatever the crap it is, that's not its official name.
So more of it's a something that just the locals nickname it, right behind the hall of Ashley Madison users, because apparently 1 in 5 people from Ottawa use the Ashley Madison website.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's the thing that came out with the Ashley Madison hacking scandal from a couple weeks ago there. 190,000 people from Ottawa use that website, which would be equivalent to 1 in 5 adults.
That is ridiculous.
And I guess it would be like close to half their marriage population. Like, it was a huge deal on CNN. The American News was talking about it. American News rarely talks about Ottawa. And then John Oliver had a clip about it and had a couple of amusing commercials poking fun at it.
And this task really isn't that interesting to talk about.
I would disagree, because I think this is the second week in a row where Nick and Matt take a leadership role, because last week they came up with the hawk, and all of the teams that were trailing were able to, pass through the soccer task, and nearly all of them were able to beat Nick and Sabrina and ultimately knock them out. Yeah. And Nick and Sabrina only survived by 2 minutes. Not sure if you caught that, Michael, but
yes,
the departure times indicated it was just 2 minutes that Nick and Sabrina survived by last week.
I was deliberately skipping over that because, yes, it proved my theory of them being about half an hour ahead was wrong. Yes, I was wrong. Yes,
and I was right. Another point for me. But with this week, we have Nick and Matt, rounding up the troops that are trailing behind once again and coming up with another method for all of them to stay alive and get out of the back of the pack. Like, if Nick and Matt didn't come up with the method for everybody to do, 5 or 6 numbers each until somebody got it right, then Hamilton, Michaela may have had enough time to get to the airport and back and still check into the pit stop, because there had to be at least one team that wasn't going to be able to complete the library task, because that was a pretty difficult task.
Oh yeah, it was still a Canadian active route info, that is to say, ridiculously hard. But there wasn't a lot of notes to make.
I wrote that the librarian was wearing a scarf.
Well, thank you for your insight there, Logan.
End of the podcast. The librarian has a scarf. Seacrest out.
This truly is what we keep you on the podcast for. Noticing people's fashion choices.
This has really been an ongoing thing for the past 2 years. I don't know why, but I always pick it out.
Having said that, if we do get a chance to talk to Nick and Sabrina, I will be asking Nick whether he actually does own any long trousers.
See, now you're getting in on the fashion choices. It's contagious, Michael.
It's from being around you last September. So Hamilton and Michaela are the first to leave, with Nick and Sabrina in second, Brian and Cynthia in third, and Dijon and Leilani in fourth. And then the bottom 5 decide to work together, as Logan said. And then we have a roadblock.
You know what was the best part leading up to the roadblock is Brian hitting on the taxi driver on the way to the roadblock.
Yeah, Brian and Cynthia are becoming our sort of stealth comedians of the season, which I didn't expect.
Brian still says everything in that emotionless tone, but it's just like the funniest crap you can come up with. He always keeps a straight face, because most of the time he truly means what he says. But I don't know, there's just something about the straight face demeanor when he says these funny things that just, makes it that much more funnier.
I don't think he realises some of the silly stuff that he's saying.
So Bill will stick around for him.
And the roadblock is who has an eagle eye?
Oh, no. Eagle eye?
To which the correct answer is, of course, Ian from Amazing Race 3.
Or Louie and Michael?
Or Louie and Michael, yes.
That's the first thing I wrote down, thinking, oh no, this is terrible Amazing Race 16 flashbacks.
In this roadblock, one team member must climb the Angus L. MacDonald Bridge and scan the skyline for the race flag hidden at Citadel Hill, where they'll find their next clue. And it was Hamilton, Nick, Brian, Leilani, Nick, Sean, Jesse, Kristen, and Opie doing the roadblock. And yet again, not a lot to say about this, apart from the fact that Nick, off of Sabrina, decides that it'll be fun to go find a boat instead.
A red and yellow boat. Good old classic Hayley moment.
I think we should start calling that the Hayley Keel Memorial moment.
Yes, from the Amazing Race 26 finale, where they had to do a very similar task, and then Hayley just mistakes the red and yellow flags for something else on top of a parking lot.
Yeah, it was poles on top of a parking lot. Gino and Jesse decide to basically cheat off Neil and Kristen, and they give their driver really, really vague directions to Citadel Hill, which leads them to be taken to the completely wrong place.
Well, Yeah, Jesse pretty much has to blame himself for that. I was reading from people who live in the Maritimes online that the description that Jesse gave pretty much applies to any sort of landmark or memorial in all of the Maritimes.
And because it's Gino and Jesse, they decide to start running back down, which I did appreciate. And once teams get to Citadel Hill, they have to head to the Halifax Public Gardens, which is just around the corner, and correctly identify a selection of fruit smoothies to receive their next clue.
Because Dairy Queen owns Orange Julius, which I think we discussed before.
As if you didn't guess from her Dairy Queen t-shirt.
I think, didn't we discuss this last week, or maybe it was somebody else completely different, where we were talking about, how there might be an Orange Julius task just because they're tied to Dairy Queen.
Yeah, I think we did, actually. Because we did predict there'd be a Dairy Queen task in the next couple of legs. And it was Bran and Cynthia whose taste buds got them out of that active route info in first, and led them to the detour, which is Bubbles or Suds.
When there's, especially in the Maritimes too, have you ever seen the show Trailer Park Boys, or heard of it?
Vaguely.
Okay, because it's a show it's either based out of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. I've seen all the seasons except for the last one. And just the fact that they decided to have a detour where it's Bubbles or Suds, they needed a cameo from Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys. He's the most iconic character from the show. That was a huge miss for production.
And also, they're not above doing terrible cameos.
Yeah, it would have been so much better than any of the random Olympians or faux Canadian celebrities that have appeared in the past 2 seasons. Bubbles is legit. A friend of my brother's, when the Trailer Park Boys were in town doing some sort of, stand-up or promotion of their movie or whatever the crap it was, she actually made out with Bubbles.
Right.
And this was 6 or 7 years ago, so I am 2 or 3 degrees away from somebody who made out with Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
So basically, in summary, Logan made out with Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
Yes, by guilty of association.
So yeah, it's Bubbles or Suds, and in Bubbles, teams must find the Aquatron, extract 2 live lobsters each, and properly tag them to receive their next clue. And in Suds, teams must find a delivery truck and deliver 3 beer orders and return 2 empty kegs from each location to receive their next clue. And I bet Cynthia could have done with Nick to help her down to the bottom of the Aquatron.
Oh, you actually went there.
Listen, Logan, you know that I did a Photoshop of Nick and Cynthia ghosting, seeing as though Nick referenced it.
Yes, Nick off of... this is annoying to have 2 Nicks, by the way, in the same season.
Nick off of...
But yes, Nick did reference... What was it? Was it Hamilton Michaela at the detour that passed by him? And he said, they didn't even acknowledge me. I'm like Patrick Swayze in Ghost. And this is after Nick and Matt already won me over by referencing my personal favorite movie of all time, the Street Fighter, the movie. So for him to reference Patrick Swayze, the first thing I thought of was, I wonder if there's going to be any ghosting going on. And yeah, sure enough, you do the Photoshop of Nick and Cynthia ghosting.
I know that it was so predictable for me to do, but it's also hilarious. And it just inspired me when he said it. So I had to do it, especially after the community episode where...
No ghosting! No ghosting in the pottery class.
I was like, I have to make them ghost. It's a requirement. And Dijon and Leilani decide to bicker again because it's them. And Sean says, so essentially, we're far more hardcore than all our fishing ancestors.
Yeah, Brent and Sean, just hardcore. That's what I think of when they're on screen.
Yeah, you contrast the hardcore with them then screaming when they have to tag lobsters.
Yes. Or Cynthia diving for lobsters.
Yeah, or Cynthia diving for lobsters, which, is a personal highlight of mine. I did rewatch that purely because it's not as funny as the cargo net face, but it's up there.
If only Nick was there in teacher mode to help her out, besides the ghosting.
Well, she did ask if there was anything to help her get to the bottom. So, Nick was just at the bottom of the pool going, come on, Cynthia, I can help you.
You can't see me, though.
And Gino was a complete show-off and got both of his lobsters in one go.
Yeah, show-off. So arrogant. So annoying. So douchey.
Having said that, above everything else, Sabrina was nice and sassy in this episode.
Yeah, she was willing to go into the water, because, as we discussed before, because, with casual fans saying, oh yeah, Sabrina's the whiniest person because she didn't even want to dive off the diving board into the water. And then we had to remind people and say, hey, based off the bios, this was actually best case scenario because Nick and Sabrina agree that Sabrina would do all water tasks because Nick is petrified of water even more than she is, and she's already petrified of water to begin with. So it's nice to see this episode that this information, instead of it being tucked away in a bio or silly, Canada AM interviews, not as silly as the social interviews, but it's nice to see that this became public knowledge, and we were able to acknowledge that, yes, Sabrina may have been a bit, just crying a bit, jumping into the pool of water, but she's a lot braver compared to Nick. Nick can't even put his face in water. I didn't know it was that severe.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for them next week with the double valve.
I'm curious to know what exactly that trauma was to make Nick not even want to he said he can't even dunk his face into water. I've just never heard of anybody like that before. If there was some sort of childhood incident where I don't know, Nick's parents pissed off the mafia and the mafia punished them by dunking their heads into water, not letting them come up for air or something like that. I don't know.
It's another family connection for you, Logan.
Yes.
You can't have expected to make a mafia reference and me not make a Saunders family reference.
I just need to. Well, it's not Saunders family. It's just my father's father that has that last name. But I just need to make it's really with my side of the family or my mother's side of the family. It's the tiniest reference to it, but I just embellishing it as much as possible and come up with the most outrageous Godfather-esque type story to come up with and see how much people buy into it. It just gets funnier and funnier.
In case nobody knows what I'm mentioning, I do mention this occasionally. When Logan and I met in Vancouver last September, he did tell us that his family kind of ran from the mafia, and we like to embellish it and reference it at every point because it's hilarious.
I don't even know if that's why they left, but I think it's a funny backstory to come up with.
Yeah, it was just sort of an offhand sentence that kind of made me laugh, so we keep referencing it. But yeah, according to Sabrina, Nick thinks that he can overcome his fear by jumping into a tank of lobsters.
Yes, a bunch of lobsters that can just pinch your nose off. You're gonna dunk your face into water filled with lobsters that are just gonna brutalize your face as well. Oh, that's not gonna help.
Because the best way to do anything fear-wise is to jump into a tank full of lobsters and have to dive 14 feet.
Yeah, 14 feet's a long ways to dive if you're not a swimmer.
Yeah, well, 14 feet is it's a little more than 2 of me, which is very deep.
Most people's swimming pools in their backyard is about 7.5 to 8 feet deep at the most. So, we're looking at twice as deep as a swimming pool.
I'd say more likely about 5 feet for some people, actually.
For some of the smaller pools and stuff that people just go as cheap as possible on in their backyard, and you can get away with 5 feet, but an actual swimming pools, it's not going to be 14 feet deep unless you're in the Olympics or something.
So it's Dujon and Leilani leaving Suds in first, with Brian and Cynthia in second, Hamilton and Michaela in third, and Nick and Matt in fourth. Brent and Sean left Bubbles in fifth, with Neil and Christian in sixth. Gino and Jesse left Bubbles in seventh, Simi and Opie leaving Suds in eighth, and Nick and Sabrina leaving Suds in last.
You know what, the Suds detour, it was, I think we learned that, because we know that Leilani has prescription inhalers with her on the race, but I don't think those inhalers are as essential as we thought it was going to be, because that was a lot of physical exercise, having to not only do deliveries once, but then going back and lifting all those empty kegs and stuff. And she did it without being shown needing to bring out the puffers at all. So Maybe, yeah, her asthma isn't really all that bad as we thought it might be.
Also, was one of the guys at one of the bars Monty's brother?
Probably.
There was a guy who was the spitting image of Monty.
Maybe it was Monty, but he just put a little bit more makeup on, and it's like, hey, bring me some beer. Or maybe he wants to take the beer and dump it out because he has his own brand of beer and just wants to take out the competition and wants to just take over Halifax. You know, that's his racket.
And following the detour, it's the pit stop, which is the roof of the Seaport Farmers Market. The last team to check in here may be eliminated.
Why wasn't it Peggy's Cove? What is Peggy's Cove anyway? I kept hearing people saying that they were hoping for the pit stop to be at Peggy's Cove, but then it ends up being at an old market. So, have you looked into it, Michael? Do we know what Peggy's Cove is exactly?
It's a small rural community located on the eastern shore of St. Margaret's Bay in Nova Scotia's Halifax Regional Principality, which is famous for the Peggy's Point Lighthouse.
You know what sound effect we need to play like every once in a while? It's the sound effect of Sabrina trying to taste those drinks at the Orange Julie stand. That was the funniest thing. And then Nick probably has the best quote of the episode when they were doing their whole thing at the detour, and then Gino and Jesse walk by on their flippers, and then he turns to Sabrina and says, "What, you think it's? Why do you think it's water? You think it is because of the flippers?" No, the flippers are completely unrelated to water. Gino and Jesse are trying to be that much of a show-off that they can make it all the way to the pit stop with their own self-imposed flipper handicap.
I know that that we've said for 4 or 5 weeks now that you can't basically tell that Nick and Sabrina have a 10-year age gap. You can in that scene.
Yes. Sabrina's been around the block a bit more. She knows that flippers means you're going into water.
Sabrina just gives him a look as if to say, "Come on, child, don't be so frigging stupid."
In her head, she's probably thinking, "Yeah, this definitely makes me feel like a cougar, possibly."
And he's just like, "Come on, Mom, let me do it. You know it's not a water thing."
Are you saying that if this were BoJack Horseman, that Nick would be Vincent Adult Man? There's also one other funny thing from the Suds detour with the beer. Oh yeah, with Hamilton Michaela. This is one of the worst 10 minutes I've seen a team go through.
Yeah.
Or Hamilton goes through. Not only does he lose the passport, but also cannot handle a lobster detour.
Yeah, and also on top of that, the whole reason they got eliminated is because they went to Starbucks at the airport. When they stood up and the guy in the office said, "Oh, we found your passport, she's coming down with it now," you could see Starbucks cups on the chair. That's why.
So they had a lot of time to kill.
Yeah, they were so un-Canadian that they didn't even go to Tim Hortons.
Air Canada would have had their back a bit more if they chose a Canadian coffee product instead, is what you're saying.
Air Canada would have eliminated Nick and Sabrina for them.
Come to Tim Hortons, where you get coffee, or where you can get Timbits and your passport back. Fast.
So it was Dijon and Leilani who won the leg. Quite comfortably, I think, as well. And they won a trip to any Caribbean destination that Air Canada flies to. And the equivalent of 6 months free petrol again.
So they'll be probably going to Turks and Caicos, would be my guess. Actually, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Michael, but Turks and Caicos is supposed to be, like, the Canadian government has been in talks for decades to try and make that our 11th province, 4th territory.
It's the equivalent of Puerto Rico joining the US.
Yes, that would be a good analogy. I know what I was going to say about the Suds detour. I just found it now. With how it was written up that they had to go to 3 locations, such as the Split Crow, I think was the first one they went to. I totally thought that because they were delivering bottles of alcohol, or that, I was absolutely convinced that the third location that they needed to go to was the Majestic Cafe, and that several teams would not read that part of the clue and not go to the Majestic Cafe last. Amazing Race 3 reference.
And Brian and Cynthia were second. Nick and Matt, of course, were third. Brent and Sean were 4th, Simi and Opie were 5th, Neil and Christian were 6th, 7th was Gino and Jesse, 8th was Nick and Sabrina, and last was our hamster and Michaela, and they were eliminated.
What? Why wasn't it a non-elimination leg, Michael?
Do we really need to get into the whole why is stuff not non-elimination?
It's predetermined.
I have this rant every year. Because Amazing Race is technically a game show, they are subject to certain rules and regulations, such as having to predetermine where the non-elimination legs are. Hence why Phil Kogan always used to say, this is a predetermined non-elimination leg and you're still in the race. They cannot have any influence over which teams they like and which teams they do not. Hence why Suki and Jinder got saved last year at 8. Hence why Hamilton and Michaela didn't get saved. Hence why the female cops last week didn't get saved. Just because they're a fan favourite team does not mean they will get saved.
It would have been funnier if John Montgomery said, but this is the first of 2 post-determined non-elimination legs.
Yeah. Do you think we're actually going to get 2 non-elimination legs, or do you think we're going to get like a double-length leg like we did in Canada 1?
I think we'll get 2 non-elimination legs. It seems like they watched the Amazing Race 3 and 4 before the season started and thought, hey, let's just copy their format and just hold off on non-eliminations until, 3/4 of the way into the season and then start just using them. Or they could start using them next week. It's really up to them. But I do find it hilarious that people were pissed. It's like one person was blaming John Montgomery for not making the unilateral decision to make a non-elimination leg, therefore rigging the race and disrupting the integrity of the entire show, subject them to lawsuits and possibly shut down production.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's one very good reason that they have to predetermine that, and that's because it opens them up to lawsuits if certain teams get preferential treatment.
It's suddenly the quiz show scandal all over again if they do that. That's the equivalent, people.
Exactly. And if you don't know about the quiz show scandal, do your research, to quote Mike Scoopin.
Yes.
Because I'm a complete nerd when it comes to any quiz show, basically. And yeah, it's really interesting for me, that, just in terms of rigging.
Did you like Gino and Jesse, Voldem Mussolini's other hilarious, stupid moment of the leg?
I don't like anything to do with them, Logan. You should know that by now.
Well, the park was called Point Pleasant Park, which sounds like the start of every horror movie location. And they kept calling it Pleasant Point. What up with that? Not even learning the basic names of places around Halifax.
I know. Whatever happened to Gino's geography degree?
Yes. Pleasant Point. That's a pleasant point, Michael.
And next week, teams are going back to Quebec, this time to the Magdalene Islands. And we have sand, mud, and a double battle, and a double U-turn.
Will they involve Big John Studd?
So, we have a lot of predictions next week, as I suck at the pool this year, but we are starting to have 3 bonus questions, the normal 2 and then a special one, where we now have 7 opportunities to predict the non-elimination legs. We get 2 opportunities each to predict the non-elimination legs. If we get them correct, we get an extra 5 points.
I wish there was a way to quantify whether we could predict, will next week's pit stop greeter be crazier than this week's pit stop greeter or less crazy? Because this greeter was very enthusiastic with his own singing abilities, I must say.
He's a town crier, it's his job.
Yes. Did he replace Homer Simpson after the reveal of Jebediah Halifax? What other points would I like to make? Oh yeah, so what about John Montgomery's heartfelt interaction with Hamilton and Michaela? You would never see Phil Kogan being upfront about it and just publicly supporting Hamilton and Michaela.
Yeah, he was very huggy with them.
But it was good. It was a very honest moment for the race, I think. It's one of the reasons. John Montgomery personalizes his experiences on the race so much that you really get a feel for him. At the start of this episode, he has the funny line about Buenos Aires being home to the best barbecue he's ever had. And then he's just so generous to Hamilton and Michaela and telling them to, thanks for being who you are. Because, and And the hug, too, was so sincere because, I mean, John Montgomery, I think he's older than Hamilton and Michaela combined. So, I mean, you have to keep in mind that Hamilton and Michaela are still teenagers. Like, we saw this episode with Hamilton's hesitancy to get in the water and then being forgetful over his passport that, they come off as people who are, really mature for their age, like they could pass off as being in their late 20s. But you still got to remember that they're barely adults right now. So let's talk about this double U-turn and the double battle / face-off for next week. With the double U-turn, now that, because I totally was convinced that Hamilton and Michaela would be victims when it would come up, but they're eliminated now, so they can't be U-turned. But I think for next week, what's going to happen is that somebody's going to U-turn somebody like Gino and Jesse, or maybe U-turn Nick and Max, are the only obvious threats left in the race, I guess. And then whichever of those two teams gets U-turned, I assume is going to be thinking, oh, who's behind us? Probably Simi and Opie, and just U-turn them to try and stay alive. And then I think Simi and Opie will be out.
I have a theory, but it's all dependent on whether the double battle is first or last in the leg. I think the double battle will be the first task that they get to in the Magdalene Islands.
It would pretty much have to be, eh?
Because then that will, I suppose, not delay any of the teams too much because it's a 15-minute penalty at the end.
Yeah, and I think it's an equalizer. I think it's going to essentially serve as an equalizer where everybody has to start the task at the same time.
Well, everyone's going to be on the same flight anyway, I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, this season nobody's ever been on separate flights so far.
But that will then mean that the detour will be last, meaning that the U-turn will be at the end of the leg, which is something I always complain about. I've got on record as hating it when they put a U-turn at the end of the leg, because it then means that a team who are U-turn basically have no chance to catch up, and you might as well just eliminate them there.
Yes.
But I have a theory on who's going to get U-turned, but I don't particularly want to say it because, I need to be competitive now. I need to win. I'm 9 points off the lead. I've only got 17.
Did you know that Halifax is the ocean playground of the world?
Apparently so. Looks a bit dreary to me, but...
Yeah, and I don't see anybody playing around anywhere near the ocean in Halifax.
No, I would probably say somewhere in Australia would be the ocean playground.
Yeah, as far as I know, Australia's never experienced any sort of TNT either.
I think that the double battle will be first, and it's obviously kayak polo or something similar. And then they might be nice and put the detour second, and then the U-turn, and then the roadblock, but I'm not sure. I
guess we sort of glossed over Hamilton and Michaela's, passport troubles a little bit, considering the online community pretty much took care of that. It's the only thing they talked about. But did it surprise you that the rule for passports in Amazing Race Canada is a bit different from the US version?
Not really, because I think going back to James and Abba, who I believe were the last team to properly lose their passport, they still had to check in with their passport. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a rule that Amazing Race Canada has made up. I think it's a rule they've inherited from the US. Because James and Abba did have to have their passport with them to check in, and because they were staying in Russia, they could get away with it. Mm-hmm. And didn't have to be eliminated and got the speed bump instead. But I actually think that's an Amazing Race US rule that Canada has kind of adopted, because you never know when they're going to be leaving the country again. For all the teams new in this season, they could have been going to Halifax and then on to Europe. Mm-hmm. And probably back via Toronto, but whatever.
I guess with producers, because I almost feel like the James and Abba situation was almost made up on the spot, because with other times it's like you need your passport to check in, and then they refuse to check them in until James and Abba were already last, and they realize, oh crap, it's a non-elimination round. We just can't have them out forever because, we can't eliminate somebody on a non-elimination round. That just seems really stupid.
Yeah.
So then they said, oh, come back now that you're dead last, you're not eliminated, and you need your passport by the next time that we fly out. But producers know full well that no matter what, James and Abba are done in the next leg anyway, rather whether they fly out or not, because it's an elimination round. So I assume that rule with the non-elimination came up on the spot regarding the passport. But because in Amazing Race Canada, I think they stuck to the usual rule they have where you needed to check in because it was an elimination round anyway. So it's not like if this was an all-elimination round, then sure, then they would probably be kept being sent out to try and look for it and then even check in last even if they didn't have it and then search for it next round. But really, it doesn't matter what they do either way, because if you lose your passport, you're just going to lose so much time that there's no way you're going to stay alive anyway.
How bad would it have been if Nick and Sabrina would have got eliminated here?
And then next round, like Hamilton, Michaela, because you can't search for the passport at the pit stop, like you can't go out into the public at all.
No.
So it would have been really interesting if they let them check in third or fourth or whatever place they would have been. And then next round, they don't have their passports on them. And then they're like, I guess we have to make the one flight that goes out to Quebec there. So we're just going to go to Quebec without our passport because we don't need it yet. And then do like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more, however many more legs are going to stay in Canada before they go to India, stated in the official press release, and then not get eliminated until 4 or 5 rounds later, whatever it's going to be. Because they didn't need their passport until that point. I think that would have been pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it would have been a massive loss for the season, Nick and Sabrina, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's funny that this is 2 rounds now where last round they survived by 2 minutes to stay in the race, and then this time they needed a front-running team to lose their passport to stay alive this time.
And even worse, it would have been a race for the map between them and Gino and Jesse. So you can imagine how pissed off I would have been.
Oh, that would have been the worst. I agree.
That might have actually overtaken the Suki and Jinder elimination from last year, in terms of me hating it that much.
Maybe those are too strong of words, Michael.
Oh, that episode still angers me, can I point out? I watched it again a couple of weeks ago, it still angers me.
Can't do this to yourself, man.
So yeah, Team Atwell. So yeah, any predictions for next week? Simi and Opie, you said, were...
Yeah, I think they're gonna be done. I don't think it will be a non-elimination round yet because there's only going to be 2, and we still got 8 teams left. Even though it's been rapid fire with getting all 4 teams out in the first 4 legs. I mean, there's still only going to be 2 times where a team is going to be saved. So that's 2 non-eliminations coming up in the next 7 legs. So we still got a bit of time before they need to use one of them.
I think we'll be seeing one sooner rather than later, because they do like putting them in around about this time. Well, the last non-elimination is either going to be 4 or 5 in it. I doubt we'll see it any higher than 5, although we have seen it as high as 8 before.
Mm-hmm.
Israel 4 tore up the rulebook and did their final non-elimination at 8.
Crazy. They never do anything by the book with Amazing Race Israel, eh?
The previous record was 7, which is one of the Australian seasons. But I suspect we'll see one in the next 2 weeks, and then probably one about 4 or 5 teams left. More likely 5, actually, because 4 is a bit anticlimactic. If you get down to 4 teams, you know the next leg's going to be non-elimination. I
think with what they could do, if they did use the non-elimination leg next week, I could see that because with the double U-turn and the face-off, they're just going to be creating a ton of rivalries, so I could see them using that to stir up drama that they can carry over into subsequent rounds.
Yeah.
Especially now that all the Express Pass drama is over. But still think it might be a bit too early considering how few non-eliminations they can play with for the season.
Yeah. Unless, of course, they do 3 non-eliminations and do a double elimination at some point.
They wouldn't do that.
It's happened before.
Unfortunately.
Philippines. Philippines 2's legacy, doing a surprising extra non-elimination and then a double elimination in the next leg.
What up with that? Any last words to eulogize Hamilton, Michaela in the race?
No, I'd say that this was by far the weakest leg of the 4.
It was the most entertaining Atlantic Canada leg we've ever had, though. Like, usually they're just... I always dread them because they're always the absolute worst episodes that we've ever seen in the past 2 seasons. And here we are with the best possible Atlantic Canada leg, and, I mean, it was still, like, not as good as the past 2 weeks, but Still pretty good.
I'd say PEI was better from last year, because at least PEI had the hilarious Suki domination.
Yes. And a Green Gables?
Yeah, and digging through hot poo, and teams being covered in various substances by the time they got to the pit stop. I'd say that was a more entertaining leg, but this is one of the stronger Atlantic Canada legs, but that isn't saying much. Purely because of, as Logan said, how terrible the Atlantic Canada legs are. On the whole, Jet and Dave's bullshit elimination from Season 1.
I want a hula hoop. Do you think they're lining up Hamilton, Michaela to bring back? Because,
oh yes,
they really got for a team that lost their passport, the edit was very good to them for this week.
Given that we know that Amazing Race Canada has up to 6 seasons before they have to renew the contract, and given that the rumour is 5 seasons and then All-Stars, I would be very shocked if we don't see Hamilton and Michaela back in 3 years.
They're essentially, what I was thinking is that they're going to essentially be replacing Kristen and Darren's slot, because both teams had crazy journeys with the Express Pass and then just committing some sort of blunder early on in the race when everybody thought they were the absolute front runners. And frankly, Hamilton and Michaela are like just a team that's a lot like Kristen and Darren, except a lot more interesting.
Yeah, if you consider classic editing in terms of All-Stars, Hamilton and Michaela are going to be up there because they have the backstory, they have the terrible elimination, they were fan favourites. They probably haven't beaten Gino and Jesse on the Fuel Your Favourite Team thing, but we all know that that's stupid anyway, given how ridiculous the results tend to be. I think Nick and Sabrina are about 9th on it, which is very unfair. But I'd be very surprised if we don't see Hamilton and Michaela come back. Thankfully, Gino and Jesse have absolutely no shot because Jet and Dave will have that slot.
Do you think Gino and Jesse could be going on a run in the next few legs, considering all of the really physically fit teams are out?
Well, if the double battle is at the start of the leg, they're going to be out of there fairly soon, assuming they are in the first couple of teams to get there. If they are the last team there, then obviously they're not going to get the penalty, but they will be leaving the double battle in 8th. And they will then get U-turned, and they'll have to do both sides of the detour. So, no, I don't think they will, honestly.
We can only hope.
Yeah, I don't see any team really going on a run. I'd probably guess Nick and Matt would be the most likely to go on a run because they're the most consistent so far.
Go from teacher mode to beast mode.
I don't think anyone sees them as a threat as well. I think that's what that teacher mode scene was meant to show us. No one really sees them as a threat. They're helpful guys. So I don't think they're going to be a target for the U-turn. I think that they are most likely to win next week.
You know who would have never been U-turned if they made it to the next leg is Dana and Amanda, because they would just be looking through the posters and they said, hey, none of these have the names, the 2 cops from Labrador. Like they'll see Nick and Sabrina, and then it'll be like, where's the 2 cops from Labrador? Aren't those their names?
Also, for the casual fans here who don't like Nick and Sabrina, here's a little insight for you. There is no way that Nick and Sabrina will be a top target on U-turns, because they are not annoying anyone in the race. We have not seen them annoy anyone in the race. There is no context for them being U-turned.
They only annoy each other.
Well, no, they only annoy the casual fans, who don't seem to understand that the aim of Amazing Race is to survive every round. It's nice if you can win every round, nice if you can win the prizes, but it's not essential, because you don't get any leg up from winning every round.
They'll have a language advantage next week. They speak French.
Yeah, true. That is a very good point, actually, because we saw how excited Nick was to go back to Quebec in the preview. Hopefully for their sake they get to the double battle first, so that they have a decent chance of not being penalised. Because hopefully Nick's fear of water won't come into it.
I have a feeling that somebody who is afraid of water may be afraid of paddling a boat.
But yet again, he's one of the more physically fit people in the season. So if he can sort of have Sabrina give him a pep talk, I don't think it'll be that bad. I think the narrative they're setting up is that Nick might overcome his fear.
Nah, it's funnier if he doesn't.
Yeah, it's funnier if he doesn't, but I think the narrative they might be setting up is that he could have a water task that he's forced into and sort of overcome his fear. And we might actually find out in a confessional what caused his fear.
Therapy session, that can be one of the tasks. Shala and Nabila can conduct it.
Give him some cute outfits to wear.
You know what they could have done if Shala and Nabila were in this leg of the race? Is if they replaced the lobsters at the bottom of the pool with popsicle sticks.
I'd love to see them over the detour clue, just Charlotte and Nabila go, you have to get 2 popsicle sticks from the bottom of the pool. No, we're not doing that.
Suds.
No.
And then Charlotte gets a cramp from dragging the kegs of beer. and Nabila, the things they use to push the kegs for the detour?
The carts,
they just remove the kegs, the carts. They just remove the kegs and just put Shala in there, and then Nabila has to push her.
It's been weeks since we made a Shala and Nabila joke.
Okay, I don't think we can top that for this podcast.
Having said that, I would like to see Shala and Nabila do the duel battle from next week. Maybe instead of having Devon go around with the teams, they should have just had Shala and Nabila as the correspondents.
Oh, don't bring up Devon Sultandeek.
Just interviewing all the teams when they win a leg or get eliminated, having to test out the double battle.
I'm Devon Sultandeek. I'm somehow important to the Amazing Race Canada.
And Logan's feud with journalists continues.
Which Amazing Race journalist don't I have a feud with right now?
Yeah, you've got the Harpies from The Social, James Duthie.
Anybody who does a recap.
Anyone who you slag off in your weekly Ranking the Recappers blog, which always gives me a laugh on Wednesdays. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next week for another Amazing Race Canada recap episode. If you enjoyed the show, and even if you didn't, please subscribe to us on the iTunes and give us a like on the YouTube video. If you want to see what we're rambling about this week, our Twitters are in the description down below too. And if you missed our interview with Mike and Rochelle from Amazing Race 26, that is also available on the iTunes feed, which you can find linked everywhere too. Thank you again.
Hashtag 250, hashtag Ginger Ninja, hashtag Super Kuwaki, hashtag yatncast. Peace!